and its significance on how South Africa relates and engages with countries and parties in the world. And that in our pursuance of our national interest, we should not be narrow and we should not focus on narrow self-interest, but a host of developments that should be considered for the greater good of South Africa and the world. The Commission is of the view that our national interest should be viewed broadly and include the development and upliftment of our people, the stability of our country and the constitutional order, the growth and development of the South African economy, the growth and development of Southern Africa, and a stable and prosperous continent, and a just and equitable world order. And that as the country engages with the region, the continent, and the international community, it should seek to build an environment which can realize its national socio-economic agenda, as well as the political and security interest. The Commission further reflected, the Commission recommended that we further reformulate our strategy on the engagement within the African continent. Now, on ANC's role in building a better Africa, the Commission reaffirmed the ANC policy position on the centrality of Africa and the commitment to the implementation of AU Agenda 2063, with a focus on the revitalization of Africa and its robust engagement, strengthening of Africa's institutions and leadership, consolidation of Africa's governance structures, strengthening of Africa's unity, and silencing the guns by 2020, and the SADC integration. And all these things are highlighted in our policy discussion document. The Commission reiterated the resolution of transforming the SADC Parliamentary Forum to a full legislative body. The Commission further reaffirmed our commitment made in 2008 of hosting Pan-African Women's Organization and to provide it with all the relevant resources, and that the South African government recognizes PAO as part of the governance structures of the African Union that must be fully supported and allocated with sufficient resources. The Commission recommended for a special envoy to be appointed on gender equality in Africa. On ANC's strategic role towards a better world, the Commission agreed with the central thrust of our policy discussion document, and specifically in relation to BRICS, the Commission noted the following. Well, it noted the importance of BRICS membership as part of our overall international relations strategy, and that South Africa's membership within BRICS must be exploited to expand our sphere of influence, and that as much, of course, the Commission noted that as much as we recognize that our trade has increased with some of our BRICS partners, that we must, however, balance the trade, but noted, however, that the balance of trade is still not in our favor. The Commission recommended that we continuously review and analyze the position of individual BRICS members and the role they play in advancing the world we aspire for. On International Criminal Court, the Commission confirmed the decision to withdraw. This is the resolution. They reaffirmed the resolution of our 53rd conference in Mangaung in 2012, that we should withdraw from the ICC, and that South Africa must ratify the Malabo Protocol on amendments to the Protocol on the Statute of the African Court of Justice and Human Rights, and encourage the speedy operationalization of the African Court of Human and People's Rights. The Commission agreed with the thrust of the policy discussion in this regard. On the issue of continental and international solidarity, I'm cutting on other things and focusing on.
Take your time, no problem.
Okay, on the continental and international solidarity, specifically in relation to Swaziland, the Commission reflected on the nature of the Swazi monarchy, where the king wields executive, judicial, and legislative power. It further discussed that the people of Swaziland still suffer gross human rights violations, as well as reflected on the status of political activity of Pudemo, Swayoko, and SSN that are now prescribed as under the Anti-Terrorism Act. Accordingly, the Commission recommended that the 53rd resolution of the Mangaung Conference on Swaziland be implemented, and further recommended that the ANC explore mechanisms of strengthening its solidarity campaigns on Swaziland, and that we formalize the party-to-party relations with Pudemo, but also support the call by the people of Swaziland for unbanning of political parties and the release of all political prisoners, and that the issue of Swaziland be placed before SADC for intervention. On the issue of Western Sahara, the Commission reaffirmed the resolution on continued engagement with the African Union and the United Nations on speedy resolution of the Western Sahara issue by Morocco through the implementation of the United Nations resolution on the question of Western Sahara, and to call for the referendum to determine the Sahara's self-determination. The Commission further called for the intensification of the solidarity campaign in support of the people of Western Sahara. The Commission recommended that the ANC organize, of course, study tours to Western Sahara to educate ANC cadres and the broader society about the plight of the people of Western Sahara. It further recommended that the ANC should call for the government to appoint a special envoy to Western Sahara. On the issue of Cuba, the Commission reaffirmed the 53rd National Conference resolution and reiterated the ANC's commitment to continue to support Cuba and its people. The Commission registered the disappointment with the reversal of the achieved gains with the Obama administration, and recommended that the ANC strengthen its solidarity campaign with the Cuban people for the upliftment of the trade embargo. And also to call to engage the Trump administration on the reversal of the warming relations initiated by the Obama administration. On the struggle of the Kurdish people, the Commission recommended that ANC support the Kurdish people's struggle for political rights, peace, and justice in the Middle East, and urge all role players to engage for a political solution in the conflict. The ANC further called for the ANC to further call for the release of Kurdish people's leader, Abdullah Öcalan, and all political prisoners. On Palestine, the Commission reaffirmed the ANC's unwavering and steadfast commitment for the struggle of the people of Palestine. The Commission expressed its disappointment by the Israelis' lack of commitment towards peace with the Palestinian people. The Commission debated the continued illegal occupation of Palestine by Israel, which is at its 50th year, and Israel's non-compliance with the international law. The Commission called for the downgrading of the South African embassy in Israel to send a strong message about Israel's continued illegal occupation of Palestine and the continued human rights abuses against the people of Palestine. There was, of course, another call for a shutdown of the embassy. However, the dominant view was that of downgrading the South African embassy in Israel. There was also a call for ANC to make a risk analysis on the calling for the downgrade of the embassy, and that such assessment inform the downgrade of the South African embassy in Israel. The Commission noted the work done by the ANC in uniting the people of Palestine as a prerequisite for real negotiations with Israel. The Commission recommended that ANC must continue to focus more attention on uniting the Palestinian parties, and the Commission further recommended that the ANC host a global solidarity conference on Palestine, consisting of the liberation movements of Palestine and all other international progressive organizations who support the liberation of the Palestinian people. The Commission called for the intensification of the solidarity campaign with the people of Palestine. And that's all.
Thanks very much, Comrade Miriam. I want to, let me start with foreign correspondence. Where is Sophie Mukwena? People who've got a direct interest in these international issues, which are very complex, international relations. Where's the mic? Right in front.
Hi, Peter Fabricius from the Daily Maverick. Thank you for the briefing. Could I ask a couple of questions, Madam Chair? The first is about the ICC. Tomorrow, I believe, the ICC is ruling on the South African issue.
Yes.
And there was a feeling in Durko that any decision about withdrawal should depend upon the outcome of that decision. Was that taken into consideration, or was the decision to withdraw final? And when it comes to Swaziland, you mentioned that there was a recommendation that the recommendations of the 54th conference in Mangaung should be implemented. I wonder if you wouldn't mind just reminding us of what those were, and whether the ANC doesn't feel some despondency that it keeps making resolutions about sanctions against Swaziland which are never implemented. Thank you.
It's 53rd National Conference, which was in Mangaung. 54th is still coming. Right at the back, I want somebody to talk about Kurdish people.
Yes. Turkmen Terzi from Turkey, Active News.
Take it.
Yes, from Turkey. Madam Chair, you mentioned only about the release of Abdullah Öcalan. He is the leader of PKK. But PKK is a terrorist organization recognized by most of the countries. I want to say in Turkey, since the 15 July coup, Erdogan regime implemented the state of emergency and without indictment closed down more than 2,000 unions and 150,000 government servants they fired, and 150,000 people they detained, 50,000 jailed, and still every day 200-300 people, women, children, teachers is jailed by the Turkish government. But ANC till now never released any statement. Are human rights violation in Turkey on your agenda? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please come to my right. Oh, Karin.
Karin de Plessis, I'm freelancing for the Daily Maverick. I have two questions. The first is the Special Envoy on Gender Equality in Africa. Could you please expand a little bit on what the idea is behind that and where this envoy, would it be in Durka, where would he or she be situated? And another question on the African Union. It was, I think it's the closing day today of the African Union Summit. And the fact that we did not send someone from the presidency to the AU this time required by the AU's new reforms. Does that indicate in any way a future direction of our foreign policy in relation to the AU, or was this a once-off?
I didn't get that one.
The president did not attend the AU. Does that mean a shift in policy in terms of focus to Africa? I see Daily Maverick is overrepresented. No, pass the mic to the right here. It's well represented. These are my last two questions. Two hands.
Yes, that's Tuso Kumara from ARD German Radio. Were there any discussions around South Africa engaging those countries that are providing the largest number of migrants in the country, especially that we discussed in Swaziland? Were there discussions around Zimbabwe, seeing that every time there are elections, people flock into the country, and South Africa could do something about it? Were there discussions around policies that will assist South Africa to engage such countries like Zimbabwe?
President Fernand.
My name is Zingisa from the Daily Dispatch. Ma'am, you speak about BRICS. You firstly spoke about the global balance of forces, and then you came to BRICS and you defined it as our international relations strategic point. Now, this is one of President Zuma's favorite subjects, the balance of forces and the BRICS, that he always describes as a grouping that is under attack from Western powers. My question is BRICS the best strategy for us in terms of our international relations strategic plans? And if not, what is the alternatives, if there are any? Were there such discussions at all? And also, what are the plans of taking Africa with this BRICS agenda of ours? Thank you so much.
That's the last question, Comrade.
Thank you. Maybe let me start with, if you don't mind, the very last issue on BRICS. Is BRICS the best? I think our policy discussion document recognizes the importance of BRICS and the role that it has played in increasing trade with South Africa, some of the BRICS countries. However, I've also reported that the Commission the Commission recommended that the ANC should continue to evaluate the role that is played by some of the BRICS countries in the promotion of the values and the principle of a world that we want, a world that is just, that is equitable, and that is free of exploitation of both its resources, and a world that is at peace with itself. So I think I've answered you. We acknowledge the significant role that BRICS has played in our country, but we're also mindful of the fact that we have to constantly evaluate and assess the role that it is playing, both in the continent, but also in our country. On the issue of the president that didn't attend the AU, is it a shift on the position? I'm not going to be able to respond as to why the president was unable to go to AU. However, in terms of the ANC's position, we have reaffirmed, the Commission has reaffirmed its position in terms of Africa, and also the role that has to be played by AU in the African Renaissance agenda, but also all the aspects that are captured in AU's Agenda 2063. So yes, the position is still strong and committed to the AU. On the special envoy on the gender issue, remember this issue was discussed under the issue of power. The understanding in the Commission was that the special envoy will have to work within the power office on matters related to gender equality broadly, and advancements of women's development issues. On the issue of Swaziland, yes, indeed, the Commission reaffirmed the 53rd National Conference resolution that the ANC should continuously engage with the monarchy to democratize Swaziland. And I think we've also reflected that the Commission called for the ANC to engage with the monarchy to release all political prisoners, but also to allow political parties to operate freely. And then on the ICC ruling, I thought my comrade responded to that as we're engaging with him, Comrade Mahlobo, on the aspect of that. But yes, we are considering, the fact that there is a ruling tomorrow. However, the ANC delegates and the Commission are still committed to the resolution that South Africa should withdraw from the ICC, and government should continue to exhaust all the legal processes in terms of the withdrawal issue. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The Comrade Miriam surname is spelled S-A-O-H-A-T-S-E. All right? I think we are adjourned for tonight. We'll meet tomorrow, even the plenary has adjourned. We'll meet tomorrow morning. Thanks very much, members of the media. Thank you.
Well, Miriam Soate there, just speaking to the media, addressing the media on international relations. Some surprises and not others as well. But I think one of the main issues that took center stage there, of course, is just the reaffirmation of South Africa's decision to withdraw from the ICC, and quite strongly a condemnation there of the Swazi monarch, calling for all political prisoners to be released as well, calling for continuous engagement of the ANC and the South African government with the Swazi monarch. And one of the other issues as well is the Pan-African Women's Organization. But I saw Zizi Kodwa, who is an ANC NEC member as well as a spokesperson for the party, calling for Sophie Mokoena to ask a few questions there. Our expert on international relations, our foreign editor at the SABC, Sophie Mokoena. Start on the issue, not a surprise when you look at the reaffirmation of South Africa withdrawing from the ICC there?
Well, indeed, South Africa, it's quite clear, both government level and also in the party, the ANC, that they really want to withdraw from the ICC. You'd recall that the process had started, but the courts of South Africa made a ruling that the processes were not properly followed. And since then, the Department of International Relations and the Department of Justice are working very hard to ensure that they follow the proper processes so
the matter is continuing, and the only technicality is that they are trying to address those technical issues that were raised by the South African courts. And of course, coincidentally, tomorrow the ICC will make a ruling on al-Bashir's case, so we don't know what's likely to happen. But earlier on, the chairperson of the International Relations Committee, Edna Molewa, indicated that much as South Africa has taken a decision to withdraw from the ICC, they will never allow impunity. It is for that reason they want the African court to be strengthened so that it can deal with the issue. And they've cited the case of a former Chadian president who was prosecuted on the continent. He was found guilty and he's facing imprisonment.
Something that might strain relations between South Africa and Swaziland. For the first time, we're seeing the ANC speaking so strongly against the Swazi monarch. The ANC president, President Jacob Zuma, recently in Swaziland, just last month, for the SACU summit, calling for intertrade relations. Quite strong words from the ANC there. Political prisoners, atrocities that are still being faced by the Swazi people?
Yes, indeed, quite a far-reaching recommendation, because these recommendations still have to be ratified by the conference in December or at the conference. But reiterating the fact that at the last conference 5 years ago in Bloemfontein, a resolution was taken that South Africa must really ensure that Swaziland is democratized. Now, this time around, they even make example. Immediate unbanning of political parties, release those who are in prison, but also ensure that you allow political campaigns and speeches and media freedom in that country. Therefore, I think indeed the ANC this time around has ensured that they really take a strong action or a strong position on this matter.
I think going forward, one would question what this would mean then for relations between South Africa and Swaziland. It's bound to cause some kind of dissent between the two countries. Particularly because the ANC has taken a decision to ask South Africa to put this matter before the SADC. And we are aware that South Africa will be taking the reins. President Jacob Zuma is going to be the chair of SADC this coming August. And therefore, he will have to put this on the agenda of the Troika, where they are dealing with issues of politics and security. And really, it is going to be a tough one. But I think he will have to find a way to implement what the party is saying to ensure that the matter of Swaziland is on the spotlight. One of the other interesting issues, I think, in particular relating to Israel, the downgrading of the embassy, perhaps to even to a high commission, we don't know. But this certainly speaks to South Africa's seriousness when it comes to dealing with this particular issue in the Palestinians.
It indicates that the ANC in particular is getting impatient with the Israel government, because there has been a decision that there should be two-state solution. They must live side by side, but it looks like it's not happening. And therefore, I think the downgrading of the embassy is going to send a strong message to Israel to go back to the negotiating table and ensure that perhaps the two-state solution is the issue that they take seriously. But unfortunately, currently, Griselda, we have a situation where a country like United States of America is found wanting. And for the global community to ensure that they deal with these injustices around the world, you need a superpower like America to be part of the, the whole sentiment. But you have a different president there, and it looks like it's going to be a problem to ensure that we go back to what the United Nations is all about when it was changed from the League of Nations to be an institution that deals with ensuring that there's peace around the world, and particularly at the Security Council level.
Well, finally, Sophie, just before we wrap it up, the revitalization of Africa, there seems to be quite a lot of emphasis on that and the consolidation of structures, because some would say, of course, the stability of Africa would be very important for the stability of South Africa. For us to thrive, regions on the continent would need to thrive as well.
Yes, look at what the ANC is saying on BRICS. It's saying that you have to look at individual countries. In other words, partially they're saying, yes, it looks like now we are focusing on BRICS, but we are losing the focus in terms of the African agenda. You had the rapporteur talking about Africa's renaissance. Yes. It looks like we are going back to the drawing boards to prioritize the continent. Yes, indeed, it was still a priority, but we're kind of losing that influence on the continent. And the question from Karin du Plessis, why the president didn't go to the AU. Of course, it coincides with the ANC policy conference, but perhaps South Africa should have sent a deputy president there to represent the country, because that would have demonstrated that we take the continental body seriously. But I heard earlier on, during the strategy and tactics report and the organizational renewal, that the ANC is proposing in terms of structure of the top 6. We have top 6 currently. They want to extend that. The first option is that you must have 2 deputy presidents, and 1 deputy president will focus on international relations. It speaks to how, as a country, perhaps the ANC want us to go back to prioritizing the international relations. And of course, the focus will be charity begins at home, the regional body, which is SADC, and of course, the continent, which is Africa. And then, of course, we can look at the international balance of forces. But of course, at this moment, Africa stands a very good chance to position herself, because currently, like I indicated, the Western powers are found wanting. You see what's happening in Europe. You see what happened in UK and America, and you can see Russia also is also found wanting economically. Therefore, this is the time for Africa to rise.
Always very insightful chatting to you. Thank you very much to the SABC foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, speaking on quite a number of issues there on the international relations feedback that the media has got pertaining to that reaffirmation on the decision to withdraw from the ICC, the ANC's stance and towards the Swazi monarchy, saying that perhaps talks should continue between South Africa / the ANC and the Swazi monarchy. But I'm afraid that's all we have time for this evening. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you bright and early on Morning Live. My colleague Aldrin St. Pierre will join you then. Thank you very much to my colleague Lucanio Alata, who's been with us since this morning. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.